This, but I lined it.
Yeah, that was a good idea. Then you can.
Now, when did you make that, Dorothy?
I made the dress in '95, and then I had so many things left over
The pull tabs,
that
yeah.
I decided to make this. And different students that had lived at my house, I worked at OHSU, have sent me different things.
Yeah.
My gold ones are from Sweden. Some of these are from Great Britain,
Huh.
and Australia.
Wow.
All over the world, huh?
Huh. And these are pull tabs, huh?
And you know what the dress is made on?
What?
Grocery bags.
Oh,
One night I walked out in the kitchen, I thought, oh, 2 handles. Well, that would hold my top up. And then I got into this grocery bag and I thought, how am I going to get out? And that's how it started.
oh.
Does it feel heavy when you have it on?
When I wear my
Yeah.
whole
Ensemble,
that's-
yeah.
This came about because I mentioned to my neighbor, oh, I got to do something with all these pull tabs. And I said, but I need a real strong belt. Well, it's stainless steel and this wide.
Oh, wow.
And so that's
Yeah. Okay.
where it all started. I had too many pull tabs.
But how did you end up getting the pull tabs in the first place?
Well, I come down here every year for the last 25 years, and I would sell these individual belts at Western dances.
Oh.
And I had too many, and people kept leaving them, and they've all been washed. I had to wash them all
Yeah.
and put them in the oven and get them dry. And then I counted them out in packages, so I knew exactly how many I had. And no one knows, even my family doesn't. It's written on a piece of paper.
But people had belts made out of pull tabs?
Yes, I used to sell them, and they had hat bands. I'd sell them at Western dances.
For Western dances, they would have.
And then
Oh,
I
be darned.
decided to do something with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a wonderful thing you did, yeah.
You hadn't seen anything like that.
I had not, no.
I wanted to
has,
put
I
it
don't
in the Guinness Book of Records, but the
Probably.
English pound, it was something like, it would be $295. And I thought, I'm not going to put it in the Book of Records.
Yeah, they were going to charge you.
I'll just enjoy it. I was probably 12, and I'm by this biplane down on the beach, and I had dark hair.
Could you
And then
bring that-
I want a picture of this plane ride.
Good afternoon. Today is 5 February, the year 2019. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in Palm Springs, California. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. Today, I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteers Wayne Swanson and Diane Thompson. And today we have the honor and the privilege of hearing the story of Mrs. Dorothy Myers Arthur. Mrs. Arthur worked for the Portland, Oregon Post Office during World War II. And this coming March the 2nd, Dorothy will be going up in a Stearman to celebrate her 100th birthday. So Dorothy, congratulations, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Wayne? Okay, buddy.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, Dorothy. My name is Wayne Swanson, and we'd like to visit with you for the next few minutes. In that we've already established your name, and you were in the Portland, Oregon area. Let's start with your earliest recollection. What can you remember the earliest?
Well, I would say I was probably 4 years old or 5. We moved from Selwood, which is a part of Portland, out near Lake Oswego. And in those days, that was a long way. It was 17 miles to our house. We had a 25-acre farm, and that I can remember riding on the front seat of this old Ford with my mother and father and my sisters and brother.
Was it a sedan?
Yes, it had a running board, no sides or anything. And we came to this little old farmhouse, and my mother said, "We're finally home." And I remembered that. And then that night, or one night, I remembered before we had electricity, I had my own candlestick that I would take up to my bed.
Was that upstairs?
That was upstairs. And some of the roof was slanting. Our rooms were nothing fancy. We had a bed, 2 beds because there were 3 of us girls. And the main part of the house was the kitchen.
That was the central part?
Yes.
That was where everybody
That's where we all
met,
congregated.
congregated?
You took your shoes off when you came in the house.
No kidding.
So I remember that, and I remember starting school in the one-room schoolhouse. It had a big bell tower, and it had a big stove. The teacher had to put the wood in, and that was our schoolroom.
Now, did you have to walk to school?
Yes, we lived probably a quarter of a mile from the school.
And it was a one-room school? So you had many grades?
We had grades 1 through 8, and I think there were probably about 15 of us in the whole school.
Okay. Okay, now we've talked about your first memory. Let's talk about your family, in that you said you had 3 sisters? 2 sisters.
2 sisters and a brother, and
Were
a
they
grandpa
were
on
they-
my mother's side, and a grandma on my father's side. One of them lived with us part of the time, Grandma Myers did. And I thought my brother was the meanest kid on earth.
Was he older?
My sisters and brother were 2, 4, and 6 years old when I was born.
So you were the youngest?
Yes.
Okay. Now talk about your grandparents. You talked about one on each side.
My grandparents on my father's side came to Oregon. They were truly pioneers. It was 1852. And I have a copy of the things that my grandma made notes of coming from Missouri out in the covered wagon.
They came in a covered wagon.
Yes.
My.
And my grandmother was born in Oregon before it was a state. And I don't remember too many tales about that.
Okay.
But growing up, after about 1 year, our school was consolidated with a big school. It had 4 rooms. And that was my grade school in Portland, called Collins View. And I graduated when I was 12 years old.
From the elementary school?
Yes.
And that was, you graduated 8th grade? Okay. Now, was that school close, like you, or did you?
No, you wouldn't call it a school bus. Somebody had a big old limousine that 6 of us could get in, and we rode in that old car, and you got yourself home by yourself.
Oh,
So we walked, it would be just about a mile home
okay.
every day. And I didn't like that because we had to go past the neighbor's cow pasture, and there was a mean old bull there. I didn't like him. Then after I got out of grade school, I went to the big high school in Portland. It was called High School of Commerce because we had a special school that was all boys. It was Benson Polytechnic, and this was a technical school if you were not going on to college.
Okay.
And we learned all the office machines and procedures then.
Did you take things like typing?
Oh yes, we had typing and office machines, clunkers now, they look like. And it gave us the foundation for going out and getting a job.
Okay. Now that third school, you were in the one-room school, you were in the high school.
My
Grade school, and this high school. Was that where you rode in the limousine to get to that school?
Yes,
Yes, okay. And when you finished, go ahead.
I rode in the old limousine to grade school.
Okay, to grade school.
High school, I had to get up and go with my father every morning at 7:15 because he went to work in Portland at the telephone company, and I rode to school with him, and I had to spend my 2 hours after school either at the public library or in the big department store. They had a waiting room, and I'd do my homework and then come back home at 6 o'clock at night.
Now you talk about the classes, you talk about the office type of classes that you had, the typing and all of those different machines. Did you have all of the regular classes, the English and the
Yes.
mathematics and the history?
We had the basics of English and math and languages.
Okay, now do you think you were a good student?
I wasn't super smart, but I got through. In those days, it was E, F, G, and U.
Okay.
E was excellent, and I got excellent most of the time. The only one subject I didn't care for, and I didn't really care about, was history. But I think I got a G in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, put a date on this. When did you graduate from elementary school?
I graduated in 1932, and I graduated from the high school in 1936,
Okay.
and I had my first job in 1936.
Okay, and what was your first job?
It was working at a wholesale warehouse, I guess. It would supply lots of home furnishings.
Was that, what about the transportation? How did you?
That was just the same as high school. You got up at 10 and left at 10 after 7. And my father worked about 10 blocks from where I did, and I
Okay.
would ride home with him.
Okay.
By then we had a real car. It was enclosed. It was a Dodge. And it had a blue stripe on it. And my father said, when you learn to drive, you cannot drive over 35 miles an hour. That's plenty fast.
Okay. Now, what about your first car? When did you get your first car?
Well, I got my first car when I graduated from high school. It cost $120, and it was a little Ford Coupe, and it burnt more oil than it did gas.
Oh,
But it was transportation for me to work nights in the Portland post office.
okay. Now, it had 2 seats. What about a rumble seat?
No,
No.
my sister had the fancy car with a rumble seat.
Okay. Now, was this a electric start car?
Yes.
Okay. And it was enclosed, so in the wintertime it was...
Oh, yes, it was a real car.
Okay, okay. And when you were in elementary school and when you were in high school, you weren't working at the warehouse or the post office, but did you have chores around the house? Did you have
Oh,
to?
yes. We were, at that time, we still had 20 acres. And we had a big orchard, and we had started, a vineyard had been started of grapes. And of course, this was during Prohibition. So people were always making their own wine.
Mhm.
So most of our farm was in grapes. And then my father kept all the rest of it going on weekends.
Do you remember what kind of grapes they were?
Yes, they were purple.
Purple.
I don't eat grape jelly, and I can't drink grape juice.
What other memories do you have of that time period, that school time period?
Well, probably time period, it would be up in the 40s. I was married in 1944, and we didn't have a fancy wedding. That was during the war. The veil I wore, I think there were about 5 of us had worn it. My maid of honor had one color dress, and my bridesmaids were a couple of different ones. We didn't have money to spend on frivolous marriages during the war.
Okay.
But I did have enough ration stamps. I had a nice wedding cake. And that was the start of my family.
Okay.
I married Donald Arthur in September
1944.
1944.
Okay. Let's go back. And we'll talk about your family in just a minute. But
My family.
your family. But the early 30s, we know that as the Depression time period. Do you have any recollection of the Depression and the impact on the family?
Truthfully, I didn't realize what a depression was. I just knew there were a lot of things we couldn't get because of the world situation. And I don't know, we had so many things on the farm that I think about the only thing we bought at the grocery store was meat.
Okay.
And I know at that time, my father, he worked at the telephone company, and his work schedule had cut way back. He would work 2 days one week, and the next week he would work 3, but they never laid anyone off.
Okay.
And we didn't have many shoes. I can remember you got a hole in your shoe, you could put a half sole on it. And
Okay.
it's
Now,
just-
we're talking about the 1930s.
Yeah.
The late 30s, we had the war clouds. Did you hear, before we got into Pearl Harbor time period, did you hear much about the possibility of war coming?
I don't remember ever hearing about it. I just
Okay.
remember when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and it was a
Yes.
beautiful sunny day, and my dad was working way down the corner of the farm, and I ran and told him what we'd heard on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
But the 30s were just kind of blah.
Okay.
There was nothing exciting happening.
And you had plenty of food because
We
of your
always
farm.
had plenty of food.
Okay.
I didn't know we were poor,
Okay.
you know, but we did realize later on, when World War II actually started, that we didn't have much in
Okay.
the 30s.
Okay.
We did get to go to a movie, and it was 25 cents a piece.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the Pearl Harbor time period, in that you said that you heard that on the radio.
Yes.
So then in the house you had a radio? that
We
was-
had a radio, we thought it was real fancy. It was from Sears Roebuck. And it had, they called it an electric eye. It was kind of a green looking eye that would focus when you got on the right station.
Okay.
And we just sit around the radio and listen for news.
And would that be the place that you got your music? Because
Yes.
And were there favorite programs that the family listened to?
Oh gosh. Well, way back then there was Amos and Andy, and that was a colored couple that ran a cab base.
Yep.
And I don't know. In the 30s, I guess we just drifted.
Okay, okay. So now let's go into the World War II time period. How old were you when Pearl Harbor happened?
I was 22.
So you were still at home?
Yes.
Okay,
I met my husband when I started to work in the post office.
okay. So when did you start? You had been out of high school for a few years?
Yes. I worked for a couple of years, and then I stayed home with my mother. She was ill, and I more or less just worked around the place.
Okay.
And then when Pearl Harbor popped up, that's when I went to work full time.
Okay. And then did you move out of the house? Did you move?
Well, let's see, Pearl Harbor was, no, because I was still living there. My two sisters were married and my brother was married. And I was still living at home until I got married in 44.
Okay.
And then we were very fortunate. We got an apartment and it was $45 a month. That was a long time ago.
Yes. And was that a ground floor apartment?
No,
Or
it had 2 floors.
2 floors.
And we were 1 block from, Portland had a lot of streetcars then. And you'd hear those streetcars all going, we call it to the barn at night. Clang, clang, clang. But as soon as our son was born, we had to move out of the apartment, and we found a little house next to my place where I grew up. It was
Okay.
a little tiny farmhouse.
Okay.
And in the meantime, though, before that, we got, maybe I should say I got the bug. We were down at the beach for the weekend, and we bought a house. This was before we had children. And my folks said, "You bought a house?" And well, we said, it was only a year old, and at that time, there were shore patrols, and you had to black out at night.
Yes.
And this was right on the bluff. And we were fortunate we got somebody to stay there. And we kept it for about 3 years and doubled our money, so we sold it. And we built the little house that I lived in until about 8 years ago.
Okay. So now let's go back and review in that this is, you got married in 1944. How old were you at that time?
I have to stop and think. I was 24,
24. Okay.
24, 20. Yeah.
What do you remember about the war time period? You probably heard through the media, Europe, different activities, maybe some things in the Pacific.
Well, that's when our friend was taken a prisoner of war in Germany. And then another relative of, he was in the Air Force. And a real good friend of ours was shot down, and he was a prisoner of war. So we felt very close to any war happening,
Okay.
whether it was Pacific Ocean or...
And during that time, What about shortages?
Oh.
What could you not buy?
You couldn't buy nylon stockings. You'd take your old ones into the department store and somebody would mend them for you. And makeup, it was scarce.
Now, you said earlier in the 30s that you had plenty of food because you were on the farm.
Yes.
But now you were not on the farm, so
No.
you didn't have.
Well, you didn't have we had what they call ration books. One was for basics, like sugar and flour and that. And then the other book was red stamps, and that was for your meat. And you could only buy so much. You didn't just go and say, I want this and this and this.
Okay. But did you feel you had an adequate supply?
We missed sugar really, I think, the most because we did so much canning then.
Okay.
It wasn't frozen. And we were always out of sugar.
Okay, so then part of the, probably the summer, was processing all of this fruit to put into the
And
cans?
we gave a lot of it away.
Okay,
And we had a little fruit stand. I got 25 cents a day for sitting down on the road selling what we had to sell.
okay. And that was a reasonable amount of money at that time?
Oh, yes. We'd sell a whole lug of grapes, would probably have 20 pounds of grapes in there. You'd be lucky if you got $1 for them.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you're starting a family. How many children did you have?
We
And-
had 3 children. They were all 2 years apart. Ed was born in 45. Carolee was born in 48. And Bern was born in 1950.
Okay,
And then those years were busy, just, what should I say, holding together and going to school projects and scouts and everything was available. You could buy lumber and it was just normal living.
okay. Now, this is after the war, so
Yes.
were you still working at the post office?
I was, well, my husband retired there for 30 years later.
Okay.
He stayed on as a regular, and I worked there for about 5 years.
Okay, while you were having a family?
Yeah, and then as the family grew, I went out into retail. I did selling of jewelry. I worked in a jewelry store for years, and then I worked up at the medical school and retired from there.
Okay. And if you think about having a family and working, you were able to keep all of the balls in the air?
You kept busy, Les. But we were fortunate. We didn't have any health problems or anything, and no broken bones. I don't know how we avoided that, and because our kids were always climbing in trees or something.
Okay,
But they all survived.
okay. Now, talk about those 3 children. What are they doing now? What were their
Well-
choices in life?
My son was the world's worst student, and we didn't know if we were going to go to graduation the day before. And I am not kidding you, he was 4th from the bottom of his class. He got out though. He became a successful construction man and built big projects. And he was in commercial building all his life. Number 2 daughter, she knew what she wanted to be, was a teacher. And she ended up, she never wanted to be in big schools. She always taught in private schools. She's a professor and she's retired. Number 3 daughter is still working at Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. One more year to go.
Okay.
So they all had good production
Yes.
in life.
And now, I assume that you have grandchildren?
I have 3 grandchildren, and they're all big. My grandson's 6'3", the other one's about 6. And my granddaughter, though she didn't make 6. They're all from the youngest daughter.
Okay.
They're all married, and one boy. I have 2 great-grandchildren, and 6 dogs, grand dogs, all that yet. So my life now is quite smooth. I just go to bed when I want, I get up when I want, and I've made many new friends living this long.
Yes. And as I was talking to you on the phone and missing you because we weren't making contact, you are busy. Meaning, talk about your daily life. What's a day like?
Well, 3 days a week I play bridge. I used to go to exercise class every single morning. I did for years and years until they quit the class. I like to walk, and I just keep busy. And then I go, at this age, I go see people in their retirement homes, and I'm fortunate. I can still see, and I can still drive my car.
Is that right?
My car, I drove to Anchorage, Alaska about 10 years ago.
Did you do that by yourself?
I took a girlfriend with me, and we had a wonderful trip.
How long did that trip take?
We were gone 3 weeks, because it took us 5 days to drive from Portland to Anchorage. And at that time, there were only 2 big ferries that came into Anchorage to take us all the way back home.
Yes.
And so it was an adventure. Moose are awful big. and it was just something I wanted to do.
Okay. Let's go back to your family. Did you take vacations? And
Oh,
did you
yes.
go to the beach? You talked about
We
a
were
beach house.
campers. We loved, this friend of ours that was a tail gunner and shot down during the war, we always camped with them. There were 2 children in that family. And all of their growing up years, it was mostly camping, but we always had a vacation.
And that was summertime.
Yes,
Okay.
and my husband liked to fish, and there was just always something going on.
And where did you take these vacations to?
Well, across Canada a couple of times, across the United States, and I think I've been in every state of the Union but 2.
What are those 2?
Well, one is Alabama, and the other one is Arkansas.
Okay. Interesting.
So, and then, I was trying to think, after our children were married, then we started on bigger trips. My first airplane ride was to Hawaii, and in those days, you dressed up real nice and you wore a suit. You didn't go clumped down in your old clothes. And then we would go on cruises on little ships, not these monsters they have now.
Where would you cruise to?
We cruised one year all into the northern part of Europe. Then we took 2 trips on the Mediterranean. And then I went to Bangkok. I've been to Australia. I think I've been to 21 countries. That's enough.
Now, did your children come with you, or was just
No.
your husband?
My husband passed away when I was 56. And part of it was always with him, and then I just went on my own on my other cruises.
Interesting. Very good. Let's go back to your first airplane, when you saw an airplane. What was that like?
Well, I think the first one I saw was that one on the beach that I really, well, I mean, to be up close,
Yeah.
was really neat. And I was only 12 years old then. And when we lived on the farm, airplanes were so new that they used to have big beacon towers
Yes.
that would flash.
Rotate.
And that always flashed in my bedroom window when I lived on the farm.
Okay.
And then that was something else in World War II. We had air raid sirens. They were built on big, high standards.
Yes.
So
Did you have to shut off the lights at night?
not in Portland, no, we didn't.
Okay.
But our beach house, you had to secure everything dark. And even your headlights were just little slits. You didn't go out, you didn't have to.
What other things do you remember about World War II time period? Was there, you talk about...
Well, I can remember the shipyards were the hub of activity, let's put it that way. We had shipyards in Portland, we had them in Vancouver, Washington, and it seemed like there were trainloads of people just coming into Portland to work in the shipyards. And then everybody thought it was good money, and I think they were only starting them like at $300 a month.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what was the normal person's wage at that time?
Well, my husband worked in the post office, and when we got married in '44, he was making $1,800 a year.
Okay.
And then it, of course,
Grew.
graduated on. And I was making the same.
Okay.
So, and rent would be about, well, some of them went up over 100, but I think ours was, for the house was about 65.
Okay, that's $65 a month.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you were going to buy
You
it...
couldn't get a phone always.
Okay.
They were already all taken up.
Allocated.
Yeah, because in our apartment, we didn't have a phone.
Okay. Now, did you have access to a phone? Was there a phone down the street? Or
Well, we had
neighbors?
to go down to the corner grocery store. It was
Okay.
a little mama papa store. And they had a payphone, and you paid for your own phone call.
What did it cost?
I think you could phone then for a nickel.
Okay. And do you remember on the telephones having a party line?
Oh, yes, because my father, working in the telephone company, he had what we call climbers, and out on our farm, we lived on a farmer's line.
Yes.
And the lines would get crossed, and they'd always call Bob to come and climb the pole and get the line going again. We never had our own phone until after World War II.
Okay.
We didn't have cell phones.
Interesting. What was your first automobile?
Oh, that was that little Ford. I spent
Yes.
$125 for it. It was a Ford Coupe.
And how long did you keep it?
Well, I kept it until about, 48. I got it. I really don't know when I got rid of it.
Okay.
Because I know I got rid of it before 46, because when we moved out to that little rental, we had one car.
You had been married for 2 years, so
Yeah.
you kept it.
And we only had one car, and it only had one running board.
Okay.
My husband had a Buick convertible when the war started, And he bought it off of somebody that was drafted. And the day we got our marriage license, he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I sold the Buick." Well, I almost didn't get married. I thought that Buick was perfect. So that's, and we always had just one car after that.
Okay. Now, that first car that you, we asked about the electric start. You didn't have to crank it.
No.
No, okay.
No, it started with the key.
With the key, okay.
And well, the very first car I can remember my sister got when she was in high school had pedals,
Yes,
3 pedals to shift gears.
that
or
would
something.
be a Model T.
Yeah.
Now, when did you learn to drive?
When I was well, I learned to drive a tractor first. Our neighbors had a tractor, and I learned how to drive that so they could load hay on the wagon.
So on the wagon, was the wagon
Horse-drawn.
horse-drawn?
Yeah.
How many horses?
2.
Okay. And
Very big.
what were you loading on the wagon?
Loose hay.
Loose hay.
And it went to the barn and went way up in the loft.
Okay, okay. Now, you remember anything specific about that childhood on the farm?
Yeah, I got a spanking. This really had been a working farm, and there was a blacksmith shop still there. And let's see, what was that? Senior moment.
Okay.
now. Oh, I know. And the barn was here, and that blacksmith shop was probably 50 feet from it. And I thought, oh, they were unloading the hay. This looked kind of interesting. I'm going to crawl under this fence. Well, come to find out afterward, it was a pigsty, and I was in the pig pen. Oh, I got a licking for that one. So, I said, well, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to go in there. And I remember crawling through that little door.
Okay. Well, let's talk now about the air show of when you went to see the airplane and you wanted to go for a ride.
Oh, that was down at the beach.
All right.
Yeah. And then, actually, we used to go down in Portland. The first airport was on Swan Island. It was an island right on the Willamette River. And I can remember going there and meeting a friend. He flew up from California, and he had cotton in his ears. They gave everybody cotton. So, and then big airport where it is now was started, little old Italian farms were out there. And it was way out on what we call the east side of Portland and right on the Columbia River.
Yes.
And I can remember my first trip in an airplane was to Hawaii.
Okay. From that
And Honolulu's airport, as it sits now, was brand new when we went over there, because a lady on the airplane said, well, I kind of miss the old airport. It was just a little shack, by a runway.
Right.
And I can remember, I just thought we were so rich to be able to fly to Hawaii.
Okay.
And that would have been about, would I have been about 30 years old,
Okay.
probably.
All right. Now, let's go back to the 12-year-old story
Oh,
where you went to the air show and you found a pilot with a bi-wing airplane.
oh, that wasn't at an air show.
It wasn't?
No, it was down at the beach.
Was it near your beach house?
Yes.
And
He
what?
landed right on the sand.
Okay. And why was that interesting to you?
Well, airplanes weren't that common.
Uh-huh.
And now, you just hear a plane there, so the 5 o'clock's in or something. And it just looked like it'd be fun. He took somebody up and brought him back. And I suppose then well, my folks had the whole family. They didn't have $5 a piece for a kid to go up in that airplane.
Right.
And I just always kept that picture.
So then they took the picture of you and
My
your
parents took the picture.
took the picture
Yeah.
of you and the pilot and the
No,
airplane.
the pilot isn't in the picture. I'm
Okay.
just in there. He
You're-
said he was talking to us,
Okay.
but he said, "Well, you can have your." We asked if we could take a picture, and he said, "Oh, sure, go ahead."
Okay.
I can remember his helmet was kind of a leather helmet with
You had goggles.
Yeah.
Goggles. Yes. Because you're out in the wind.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what I was going to ask
Yes.
for here.
Yes. Same type of thing.
I'm wearing my jeans and sweatshirt. Is that the proper?
Yes.
Okay.
And so then you've carried that picture with you.
I've
Well-
had it all my life. I know right where it is. And I've lived in the same house until 10 years ago, and I moved into this court apartment, and I know right where that is.
And that's up in the Portland area,
But
right?
don't ask me where the keys to the garage are. Yeah.
So then we're going to arrange for you to have a flight in a bi-wing airplane on your birthday.
I think that is the nicest gift I ever got, except when I got my diamond ring.
Now, tell us about your diamond ring.
Well, our old farmhouse had high ceilings, and we always had to get our own Christmas tree. And so my boyfriend, I said, well, we have to go out with Dad and get the Christmas tree. And my dad said, oh my God, don't take Dorothy out to get a tree. She gets one way too big. Well, we got a tree and it was too big. And we came back with it. And then I had taken walnut shells and cracked them open so they were a perfect half.
Yes?
And I put in there Donna and Dorothy engaged and glued them all back up.
Oh,
And then when we got the tree up in the house, and then I said, oh, I got a little present for everybody. You know, we had ornaments and stuff all around. And I gave them these walnuts. And we had a neat Christmas.
oh my gosh.
I gave that ring to my daughter. She was married on the same day, the 17th of September. And so on her 50th birthday, I gave her the diamond.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
tell us that date again when you were married.
September 17, 1944.
1944. My goodness. Interesting. And you had been still living at the farmhouse.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. And your husband was working for the phone company at that time.
post
Yes.
office.
Post office. Post
But
office.
my
Right.
father was a telephone man.
That's okay. So now that airplane subject, you had been interested because it was exciting all your
It
life?
was all new, and Portland, of course, like everything else after World War II, was growing and
Yes.
housing, and the Vanport city that was built for all the war workers was flooded out, and all those people had to be looking for housing and work, and Portland had, and I think all over the country, there was a big,
Demand for housing.
yeah. So there was a lot of things going on.
So now we progress. If we look at today, you are a snowbird in that you've been coming to the Palm Springs area for a long time,
25 years.
that you live in Portland in the summertime, and then you're here in the wintertime. And why did you pick Palm Springs?
Well, I got a phone call from my neighbor in the house that I lived with all my life, married life. He called and he said, you know, his wife died about a year before. We used to always play bridge together. He said, I'm going down to Palm Springs and I'd like you to come with me. And I said, oh, you know, go with you? And I said, oh gosh, I don't know. At that time, I was doing estate sales for about 10 years after I retired from the medical school. And I said, oh, I'll go down. He wanted to stay a month. I said, no, I won't go for a month. I'll go for 1 week. And then I said, I can come back home. Well, I got down there, and about the first night, he goes out for a walk, and he comes back, and he said, we're moving. I said, well, why can't we stay in this place we rented? And he said, because I bought a place. So he bought this place, and ended up, we lived together about 3 years.
Okay. What date, what time was that?
That would be in the early 90s.
Okay.
No, that would be clear back in the 80s, about 87.
Okay.
And I've been in Tramview Park ever since.
All right.
Added a little thumping here and there, so I'm very comfortable.
Okay. So then you come down in the fall and stay till the winter. And you find, do you still play bridge?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you
constantly.
find all kinds of activities and
There's always something to do because, well, I keep the library in our park going. They wanted to take the shelves out, and they're all brand new. A friend of mine made all of them. And I got up a petition and got 95 signatures, and they left my library alone. I called them freedom of speech. Yeah, so I keep involved.
wonderful. So now what are you going to do for the next 100 years?
Ha! I can't remember what I said I'd do. No, it has been interesting in a, should I say, a scientific way to see all the progress in medicine and inventions and your electronic age. You know, we thought it was marvelous when we got electricity in the farmhouse. You could turn on a light.
And there
One
was
light.
one light.
One light in every room. And I know when my mother was still alive when man landed on the moon, and she called and she said, I don't know if I'm seeing right. Where is that man? And I said, Mom, he's on the moon. Oh, he can't be. I said, yes, he is. So it's quite a span.
Yes, it is.
So,
Do you have any advice for the young folks that are growing up today?
oh, I think the only thing I could say to them is don't get stressed out. Take a little time to relax, whether it's swimming or just to be quiet or soothing music, and have a piece of dark chocolate and a cup of coffee. That's very important every day.
Okay. Now talk about coffee. In that today our culture has moved away from coffee.
Oh, it's all wine.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in your background, was coffee a part of the lifestyle?
Oh, yeah. Stop by for a cup of coffee. You know,
Okay.
you had coffee on all the time.
Okay.
And even when we go camping, we had an old coffee pot, you know, that would sit on the grill.
And camping is different today. You were in tents, and
Yeah.
did you prepare any food ahead of time?
You had your menus, and no, this one couple that the man that brought me down to California, he said, you can borrow my tent. We were thinking umbrella tent, you know, easy to put up. We unrolled the thing. It was about 9 feet long, and we had a ball. Well, everybody had a big space.
Okay. I'm looking at your bio, and it says that your mother, her name was Gertrude Pascal. Now, it says that she immigrated from England
To Canada.
To Canada. Okay. Now, do you have any idea what was the draw, why she wanted to go to Canada and then later come here?
I really don't know. I think all they were looking for was, should I say, a new opportunity.
Okay.
Grandpa was always a landscape gardener,
Yes.
and I think landing in Canada probably was not climate-wise what they thought it was going to be. And my mother was very musical, and they shipped a piano from England to Canada. And then they decided to move to Portland, and her mother had cancer. And I suppose then they didn't treat it like we are working on it now. So she stayed in Canada, and Grandpa came out with the children and bought this place in Portland. And the mother came out later.
Okay.
So that's how they got started
And
here.
that was your grandparents.
That was my grandmother on the Pascal side.
Okay.
The Myers side, I think they go back to England, but it's a, 2 or 3 generations before
Okay.
I picked them up.
And
But really, I am related to Princess Di. My grandmother's name is hanging on a flag in their house. And I'm related to George Washington, if you want to go that far back.
no kidding.
Yeah.
My goodness.
It's kind of, I'd like to be able to go to England once more. I've been in England only twice, but I didn't get into Scotland. And I would like to see where they live.
Okay. Now, did you pursue the ancestry?
A friend of mine did quite a lot of research, and she's gone way back. I think it's clear back into the 1600s.
My goodness.
Yeah, I have it at home.
A book.
She did quite a lot of research for me.
Okay. Wonderful.
No, my grandma that lived with us, she was related. She was my father's mother. Their house is still, Grandpa built it, and it's still in a good section of Portland,
Okay.
Palatine Hill.
Okay.
So we've been around a long time.
Yes.
And
Any other things that you remember that jump out at you that were fun?
well, my dad was one of 11 children, and so there were always lots of aunts and uncles and cousins around, and every 4th of July we had a big family picnic. And that was something I always thought was so much fun, because we would make our own ice cream in a great big wooden cake, and turn the handle. And so all my cousins and I, we always had picnics. And we didn't have a lot of money, I guess. I know we had to pay $1, a whole dollar, to get into this park so we could swim.
Okay.
And that was, and then you go from a big family like that down to my family now, and there's only 11 of us.
Okay.
So you can't get shoved off the earth.
Now, you go back to swimming. When did you learn to swim?
When I almost drowned.
Tell me about that.
Now, when we went swimming, it wasn't in a swimming pool. You paid to go in that, like a campground, you
Yes.
know, and a little old creek goes through, or a river. Well, I was with about 5 of my cousins, and they lived in Portland where they had a real swimming pool. Well, I didn't know how to swim, and we were all standing in this I call it creek. And one cousin shoved me. Well, I hit a ledge and I went down. Oh, that made, I came up spitting, and they finally grabbed me. And my mother said, "That's it. You're going to take swimming lessons." And I was probably 12 years old. Well, I was older than that because I could drive myself, but I did learn to swim. But I still don't like water.
Okay. Now, would that been at the beach or?
No, it was on Milk Creek, it was called. It empties into the Molalla River that empties into the Willamette.
Yes.
That
Okay.
finally gets to the Columbia out. So it was just a little farm picnic.
But it was deep enough.
Oh yeah, deep enough to make me spit water.
Now, when you, we talked about learning to drive, you said that you first drove a tractor. Okay, now when did you go from a tractor to a car? Was that pretty natural?
Yeah, because that tractor, I can remember it had big cleats
Yes.
on the wheel, They weren't tires, they were big.
Big
Cleats.
metal cleats.
Yeah, and it seems to me like my uncle bought it from Sears Roebuck, I don't know, but that was just about the same time I learned to drive a car.
Okay.
And in those days there were so many telephone poles, and our driveway was right by one, and you had to be very careful to get by that telephone pole. I remember that was the hardest part of driving.
Interesting. So, anything else that you remember? Things in high school or with your kids?
Oh, I remember high school. You probably couldn't put this in. I went to high school. See, Cleveland was like I explained, it was a business school actually, but it was part of the school district's thing. This is terrible. My brain's not working on overtime.
Well, tell me about your dress in the meantime. In that, why did you even think about building one of these dresses?
Well, I always liked, I'm not an artist, but I can get ideas. And even when I was growing up, I had a cardboard doll that stood about 24 inches tall. I made it out of a heavy cardboard. And I designed clothes for her. My uncle was a wallpaper and painter, and he gave me an old wallpaper book, and that was my material. And I would create dresses and things like that. And I've always had a creative mind, but I wouldn't say an artistic one. It's just an idea.
Right.
And then that's when I decided, I think being ornery, I decided I wanted to be different.
Okay.
It'd be like your hippies,
Sure.
we're going to be different.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't going to be like everybody else.
Okay. So then, as I understand the story you told me, that these pop tops have come from all over the world. So you collected them for a long time?
It didn't take long, really, because they're scratching on
Yes.
me. People knew I was saving them, and they would just save them, and then I'd get a whole bunch, and I'd wash them and put them on cookie sheets and put them in my oven to dry, and then I counted them out into envelopes. And
Okay.
I just decided I was going to do something different,
Okay.
and that's it. So it is different.
Now, have you done other things like this that were crafty?
Oh, not really. I used to design my own dresses and things.
Okay.
I would make, I used to sew a lot.
What was your first sewing machine?
I thought you was going to ask me the first thing I sewed.
Okay, I will.
I hated my home ec teacher with a passion because you had to baste everything first before you could sew it. Huh. I got to the sewing machine, I made my pajama bottom and showed it to her. She said, well, that's very nice, but she said, where's your basting? I said, I didn't need basting, I just make them. Oh no, you take that out and you baste it first. Oh God, I hated that one. I never basted anything after that. So there are things we do remember.
Yes, but did you?
But it teaches you.
Yes, it does. You built clothes,
Yeah.
but did you take them to the fair and
Yes.
compete?
Yes.
And what kinds of things did you take to the fair?
Well, this one's been through in pieces. Well, down here, even at the Day Festival, I got the blue ribbon.
Is that right?
No, I never entered clothes in it. I just got the idea to make them.
Okay, okay. Well, very good.
Well, I took a tuxedo once and cut it all up and made myself a suit. That was another chore I'd never tackle again either.
Now, did it look like a tuxedo when you got through, or was
No.
it no?
It was a nice suit with a skirt.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
but I'd tackle anything.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that we should talk about that is interesting, or?
No, I don't think so.
But you are looking forward to flying in the airplane.
Yes, I'll be here.
Okay.
What time I'm supposed to be here?
Probably about 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And we'll probably come pick you up if you want to, or somebody can
No,
bring you.
I'll just bus myself. I
Okay.
think my kids will probably come down
Oh,
here.
no kidding.
My kids are all gray hair.
How many people would do you think would come?
Well, there'd just be 4 others.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I sure want to thank you for visiting with us,
Well-
Dorothy. This has been delightful.
Thank you, and for all the people that are so gracious to enjoy art.
Well,
That's what it is
well,
to
we
share.
have our worlds, but we don't remember your world, and that's what's so good about this kind of a
I can
conversation.
remember my mother got into a horse and buggy. We lived a mile from the closest public transportation. And we were walking to go catch the bus, and Mr. Hobson offered us a ride. And I said to my mom, "You're not going to get in that." Well, she said, "We certainly are." I had to get in the horse and buggy. I was so mad. I was little, but I mean, I was probably 5. And I pouted. But I remember that stupid horse.
Now, why was it distasteful? Why did?
I just thought that was too old.
Okay.
Horses weren't in now. Cars were in. See?
Oh.
I didn't want to be in a horse and buggy. No, I've remembered that all my life.
Well, I sure want to thank you. I want to thank you for being so alive and
I'm thankful for that too.
and exciting and telling us all of these stories.
Well, I think life is just what you make it. It can be interesting or you can be bored to death. And I have been fortunate to meet interesting situations.
And do you have any, like you've been interested in this airplane ride, do you have anything for the next 100 years that you would like to do?
No, because I'm scared.
Oh?
I don't think my wrinkles can go that deep that I'll live another 100 years. But thank you anyway.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Very much.